Reed, Dr. Tuckson, what a thrill to have you with us. And I have seen you on CNN, and now you have the pleasure of seeing Dr. Tuckson right here at CNS Summit.
Well, thank you very much for that, but this is a lot more scarier than that.
Oh, come on. But considering all that you've journeyed and everything that you do, I know that, of course, right now you're championing Tuckson Health Connections, and it is a very significant movement that you're the catalyst of to bring together very diverse parts of the health ecosystem. And I just wanted to bring everybody back a little bit to Reed's background. Born and raised in Washington, D.C., segregated city, unfortunately. Parents, health professionals, your father a dentist, your mother a nurse, in the thick of things, trying to help people. You're raised in that household. You go off to Georgetown Medical School, fellowship at Penn. Call from the community. Reed, come home. Come home to what? Come home to be the public health commissioner, the health commissioner of Washington, D.C., the youngest health commissioner of the city still. And you take on a role of great responsibility during a pandemic in the United States. A pandemic that really almost overshadows the current pandemic in many ways. Racial inequity, health disparities, communication chaos, HIV. I'm curious as we kick off, because I think that experience may have influenced the journey that you're on right now for the health of this nation. What were you thinking of when that call came in and you decided to answer that call and you were off on this direction and you shift over to become a figure of national public health?
Well, thank you for the question. And let me, while discussing the particulars of my situation, resonated with connecting with everyone in this room. Somehow or another, I was lucky enough, as each of you, I am sure, have been, to have that little spark, something that you have no idea where it came from, that calls you, that says, I need to serve. I need to be involved in making this world somehow better, and through the vehicle now that we're in this room about in terms of health. Will people get a chance to survive and maximize the full extent of their God-given human potential? There is something in us that we were so fortunate to have, that teeny little spark. For me, that spark was enabled by the environment and the culture that I lived in. Washington, D.C., when I grew up, was a segregated city. We could not move into the home that we eventually lived into until I was 8 years old, because there were only certain places in the city that we could be in. That experience of being in a city which is so segregated, but also in Washington, D.C., we could not vote. Until John F. Kennedy was president was the first time we ever could elect our own mayor and our own city government. And the point of that is that I got to see as a child firsthand what it is like to be in an environment where the oppression, the pain, the suffering of that environment, how it related to health. How people made choices and decisions, how people interacted with the society. I was able to see at a very young age, because my mother was a visiting nurse going out into the community. She would go into the back alleys, and the gamblers rolling dice in the alley would stop and say, oh, hey, it's the nurse. And she could then go into and say, there's a woman up on the third floor who is pregnant, but we know she's doing drugs and she hasn't been out. So we need to engage. So I could see the social environment and how it affected the opportunities for optimal health and survival. So that what that taught me and gave me was a sense of empathy, a sense of being connected with people who are suffering, who are challenged. And so my own particular environment, growing up like that, enables me now, I hope, to be empathetic to people from across different tribes as we live in this modern society where everybody's isolated. I'm in this group, I'm this group, I'm this, I'm that. The experience that I had gave me the empathy to allow me to have conversations with people that are very different. So to conclude my answer and to answer your question, One of the things that we could not do in Washington was to run our own affairs when I was a kid. And so my parents around the dinner table always lamented how frustrating it was to be governed by 3 Southern congressmen who could care less about the people who are of color in the city. We made a commitment that if we ever got a chance to run our own affairs, we would show them. We would show them that we have the intellectual capacity, the competence to be able to respond. And so when I got the call that said, it is time for you to leave your fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania and your matriculation at Wharton School of Business, you must come home because the city needs you right now. We're in the middle of this HIV epidemic and you have skills that you have been honing. Come home and serve. Absolutely, you come home and you serve and you bring everything you have. So my particular situation is not especially important to you. What is important, I think, that bonds us is fidelity to that somehow indefinable seed of impulse to serve, that impulse to do good. And I would beg and plead each one of you, please, no matter how complex your business life is, no matter how intrigued you are with the beauty of your technology, the innovativeness of trying to raise seed money as an angel from angel invest, all of that, please take time to nurture that seed and that empathy that allows you to think about the larger purposes and transcendent values of why you do what you do every day.
Beautiful, beautiful. Just to give everybody a bit of sort of panoramic understanding of Reed's sort of touch throughout the fragmented health ecosystem. You have been a senior vice president with United Healthcare. You're on the board of 2 biotech companies. You're a former board member of one of the nation's largest now private health systems, LifePoint. You are serving in various capacities. You've been with the National Institutes of Health. You've pretty much touched every aspect of the health ecosystem. You're a unifier. You're a unifier. I wanted to ask you, when you look over the certain situation that we're still in this era of COVID pandemic and the era of the pandemic of miscommunication. When you look at where we are right now, how we've handled the whole COVID conversation, could you reflect on how we prepare best for the next wave of whatever comes in terms of how it impacts those who are really most in need, people of color, rural communities, the aged, people who are really under the economic threshold? I know you're bringing all that empathy forward and you care. What's your perspective about what we do next?
I think the thing that we all would, I'm sure, sort of have a common understanding is that the next wave of challenges will be related to mistrust, distrust, and misinformation. The American people now are so disenchanted with almost every sector of their lives. We don't trust the criminal justice system anymore. We definitely don't trust the political system anymore. And most people don't trust organized religion anymore. But the one sector that you cannot, as a viable civilization going forward, you cannot lose faith in is the health infrastructure, health and medical infrastructure, because that's about life and death. This is if I think back to how many times I've been able to be privileged to give the graduation speech at our medical schools and nursing schools and health profession schools. I get to take the Hippocratic Oath like every year, like a couple of times. These are cornerstones of Western civilization. I think that what we now see, and unfortunately because of what's getting ready to happen in the Congress, now that there's a change in power, they're going to go after Tony Fauci with everything they have. And they're going to just try to destroy him. And I think what that will mean is even worsening of the loss of confidence and trust in our industry. So my point being that I am convinced now that if we're going to prepare for the next thing, which will be shortly coming, we're still not out of this one, the entire health ecosystem is going to need to come together. For the first time in our history, every sector needs to decide and say that we will speak as one voice to the American people, and we will say, we hear you, we understand, and we got this. We need to say to them that we will not allow you to lose trust in us. We are not perfect, but today we are going to be consciously accountable for enhancing our ability. We're going to mount leveraged campaigns. Everything from adopting the secondary science teachers associations in every one of our school systems and say we're going to teach science to allow a kid graduating high school to participate in the modern genomic world. Oh, we've got an mRNA vaccine. What? You're trying to kill me. Are you serious? Now we got to get to a place where you've got an mRNA vaccine, the greatest triumph in human history, done so fast. People came together. We are so excited about what we can do to save life. We've got to get to that place. We've got to get to a place where those physicians who spread misinformation no longer get to have the certification of their specialty board. We've got to put in everything in between. So to conclude, what we're trying to do now, and we're close to pulling it off, is to, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were mad at me for a minute.
You'll have opportunity.
Thank you.
You'll have opportunity. Wait a second.
I love you, brother. So what we're doing, imagine if you could dream to bring the American Association for the Advancement of Science, basic scientists, Research America, bio, pharma, all the hospital associations, the Federation of American Hospitals, AHA, all the medical specialty societies, AMA, APHA, the Public Health Association, the America's Health Insurance Plans, the nursing associations, the ethics, all of them together. Do you know we're like that close from pulling this off and being able to go forward? So at some point, as soon as we launch this, we're going to be looking to you and all of your companies, and we will put into a database, a compendium of everything that everybody is doing so that you're sitting there in New Jersey and you see that they're adopting the Secondary Science Teachers Association in New Jersey, and you say, well, I don't have a lot of money. I'm a startup, early stage company, but I can jump in and support that. And so we leverage and we build and we grow. And so this is really where we're kind of at. But my point is, if we're going to be ready for the next one, we've got to come back to what is truth. We have to teach. Now, so many of your businesses, I'm sure, are associated with genetics in some way. So how do you teach the American people to make probabilistic statistical decisions? How do you teach people to deal with uncertainty and risk? How do we be able to say to people, this is what we know, this is what we don't quite know, and here's how you need to navigate so that you protect not only yourself, but some kind of infused humanity that says it's not just about me, but if I can make you sick and kill you, I got to care about what I do. So how do we teach those things? And this is where I think the next step of the fight is. I'm really excited about getting at it because the rest of America is sitting around going, oh my God, it's all so terrible. What are we going to do? We get to do something.
Now, I also feel like I want to stand and applaud for Reed. Hold your applause. There'll be ample opportunity. We want to hear from Reed right now. Reed, you're really connected. I mean, you've been a public health leader, Commissioner of Public Health in Washington, D.C., National Institutes of Health, all sorts of opportunities to really see the inside of the system. I wanted to get your perspective as a health professional about what all this means for people who are physicians and nurses, staff at hospital. We've seen the signs that say frontline healthcare worker lives here, and we're also facing for the first time a possibility that people who are dedicated to healing are thinking of dropping out of medicine because of the current environment. What would you say to them?
First, let's not diminish the dimensions of the challenge that you raise. Look, this healthcare system is going through, as we all know, rapid change. Cost is such a huge problem. No sector in healthcare will be self-sacrificing. Let's be clear. Nobody's going to give anybody a break. Everybody's going to get as much as they can every time they can. And so I know from the boards that I'm on, the biotech boards, we're scrambling every day to raise enough money to stay afloat and to get that clinical trial done and try to make sure the FDA don't put us back another 2 years, right? So everybody's got their issue. But think about the people. The number of Americans who are in medical bankruptcy, the number of Americans who are sacrificing their drugs because they got to pay the mortgage, the number of people that are being sued. So we've reached the cost ceiling after 13, 15 years of saying you can't have any more percentage of GDP going to, well, finally the sky has fallen. So now that downward pressure puts everybody on notice. So yes, there will be a lot of challenges for every part of it, including docs and hospitals, as we try to say we've got to make this more efficient, we've got to make it work better, and we're going to have to change our expectations. I can't take that away. That is the reality of the world. And what does that then mean? We ask ourselves, why do I do the work that I do? Is this all about me making $1 zillion and sitting on the beach? And if I don't get that, I'm pissed? Well, then do something else. Because that's not what this business can be anymore. It can't work that way anymore. It cannot be your life versus my yacht. It can't be that. And so we have to not only then say, what are we doing? But innovation for innovation's sake is meaningless. I love all the bells and whistles. It's terrific. I mean, it's just great. Does it work better than the thing before? Does it take costs out of the system that it did? If it didn't, then why are you doing all this work every day? It's unsustainable. It cannot happen. And so I just come back to innovation for purpose and the role of science as it exists and is experienced in the society. Let me say that because I think it's very important. I love going back. I'm rereading Isaacson's book on Einstein. I was surprised to see how much time Einstein spent thinking about the experience of science as it expresses itself in the world. I would urge each and every one of us to become as thoughtful and as great leaders in that, even while you are attending to the 90 hours a day. I invented that. The 90 hours a day that you are spending on the micro minutia of running your companies, you have to look up every once in a while and think about your responsibility as individual companies and we as a collective on how science experiences itself in the world. What are the transcendent purposes and values that must come to play?
So pivoting off of that, and of course Einstein said imagination trumps knowledge in his essence, and he really preached imagination. You're expansive. You're very expansive. You've started Tucson Health Connections. You're using your 90 hours a day to make a difference in the world, quite distinctly. We're at a period where distrust in science, miscommunication, people grappling for the mic on television to sort of disagree with each other in terms of what is science, what do we do next, and you're pulling together this wall-to-wall, this universal coalition of the health ecosystem. How do you hope to mobilize all of these organizations who historically have been very fragmented and separate from each other to unite under an umbrella to make a difference in the world?
I'm very conservative in my approach. The values and the principles that underlie every one of your mission statements, every one of your personal ethics, are so immutable. You cannot turn your head from that. And as long as you stay true to that, and then I come back to the empathy. I told you my story, living in a segregated city growing up until, like I said, again, until I was 8, we finally integrated a neighborhood. You can say, okay, that's interesting. But what I'm interested in is, what is your story? I'm backstage talking with a new friend whose parents immigrated from Yugoslavia. And he's early generation here and just sold a company and about to start another one. He and I engaged in a conversation. I engaged with you in a conversation because your people came from someplace else and they're now here. And I'm interested in yours. My point being, the great thing that Amir did, and why Amir gets me to, I don't belong here. You know, I'm not one of you. You all are so much smarter than I am. You're so much more brilliant than I am. How he picked me out of the gutter and brought me up and says, Reed, you're going to be a part of this. I think what he's getting at, and is important, is that we come to CNS for a reason, and that is to network, to engage with each other. And some of you are going to spend a lot of time engaging around business. But what I would say in the last seconds that we have here is please spend as much time engaging with each other to know each other's stories, so that we know each other's stories and we broaden, turn the damn TV off and listen to each other, and then take that empathy, that learning, that connectivity, and we spread it so that when we are in charge of trying to do the clinical trial and you're supervising or hiring the company to do the clinical trial, you're saying, hey, I want to make sure that when you represent my company, you are representing the values and principles that we care about. We're going to make sure that we reach out to people and engage them in the ways in which transmit to what we are trying to be all about. So let's just spend our time in the networking, talking each other, sharing our stories as much as we share the very sophisticated business trick of the day. And I thank you all for the chance to meet you.
Reed, Dr. Tuckson. Now you can applaud. Thank you. Thank you. Phelps.